Hello everyone, this is Roman and Elton here is with me. We're both part of the Paititi Institute team, and today we are coming to you from Sacred Valley, and we're going to be introducing a topic which is the evolution of consciousness in Amazonian and Andean traditions. And this is a fascinating topic that we have been engaging with here at Paititi Institute for many years now. And just to bring a little bit of the context to this topic, I'll be sharing from my own experience a bit, and Elton will be sharing a bit from his. I have been working with these traditions since 2001, and I believe Elton mentioned from 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience has stemmed from the Witoto, Ashwar, and Yagua traditions, as well as Mestizo, and Elton has worked quite a bit with the Shipibo culture, with the Shipibo tradition. And so we'll be introducing this topic, and I'll start with my own experience. My own experience, just a quick overview. I have initially come to these traditions in 2001. I have had an illness that was a genetic illness considered to be incurable in the Western medicine, and then coming into the Amazon rainforest, I was already in the process of understanding what this healing is about, and then about 8 months into working with the Amazonian traditions, I experienced a full remission. And at the same time, as I was going through that, I was firsthand coming to hear about the origins of these traditions. And the teachers that I have had, they were sharing with me how these traditions have come from enlightened ancestors, how these traditions have originated and were meant to be reminders to future generations about a certain original state of consciousness, a state of realization that allows the healing to take place, that unlocks the healing potential within the organism. And the healing doesn't necessarily have to do with a physical illness. In 2010, there was a documentary released about our institute, The Sacred Science, and it focused specifically on physical illnesses. However, the original Sacred Science was not specifically related to physical illnesses, although they were a part of it, but it was specifically connected to evolution of consciousness. And the evolutionary healing in the Amazon has to do with a certain experience of greater purpose, of deeper meaning in one's life, of a certain spark of that fascination with life itself. And then, of course, from that, then the healing starts to unravel. So the point of these traditions is to reconnect us to that original spark of ingenuity, the spark of inspiration, of passion, of purpose, that then brings that spark into whatever we are engaging, whatever challenges we may be having in life, and then the healing stems from that. So the Sacred Science was a much greater body of knowledge than only specifically related to the physical illnesses. And coming to the Amazon rainforest, I was hearing about these enlightened ancestors and about the ancient origins of these traditions, how in the Amazon rainforest there used to be immense cities that were sprawled throughout the Amazon, and the ancient people lived in those cities and were living in great harmony with nature. And at first I thought that it was nice fairy tales, and then gradually I started to do more research and finding out that there are actually confirmations of that found by different archaeologists and anthropologists at the end of the last century in areas of the rainforest that were cut down, that were deforested, and it was found that actually in these regions there were different roads that sprawled throughout the rainforest for thousands and thousands of kilometers. They found something similar to moats surrounding the different areas that used to be populated and were in precise geometrical shapes. And so there was a lot of evidence found, including the terra preta technology, that have pointed to the existence of ancient civilizations. And then I found out the first accounts of the explorers that came to the rainforest in the 15th century. One of them is Francisco de Orellana, and these explorers, they have submitted a report to the royal court in Spain, sharing how they have come to this immense kingdom in the Amazon rainforest, and how there was an advanced civilization there that included works of pottery and included houses that were inside the trees, on top of the trees, how there were just immense amounts of people, just a huge amount of population living in complete abundance in the rainforest. And then of course nobody has found that, and there are a few investigations into the subjects, and it turned out that the first explorers and missionaries and conquistadors brought with them the pathogenic agents against which the Amazonian population had no immunity, and then that has resulted in one of the biggest cataclysms in human history, where a huge amount of population, it's estimated up to 100 million people, have perished in a very short period of time. And then of course in a matter of a century the rainforest completely took over those cities. And now a lot of evidence is showing that actually the rainforest used to be a cultivated garden, that it wasn't this wild place, and this cultivated garden was a result of this advanced culture and civilization living in that region. So as I started to find confirmation to the existence of an advanced culture in the Amazon rainforest, it started to confirm the accounts of the indigenous elders that I was working with, who were sharing with me exactly the same thing, that initially I did not know whether to believe it or not. And then of course experiencing the effects of that sacred science on my own organism through my own healing process, then at a certain point I had no doubts that that was actually the origin of these traditions. And it wasn't just some primitive shaking of the leaves or singing some songs, but there was actually deep meaning in the work that was being done with me, in the guidance that I was receiving from the elders. And after that, then I did not have any doubt, and I have continued to embark on this evolutionary healing journey ever since. And the inspiration for that was to actually share what I learned, what I benefited from, with other people who could benefit from it as well. And that is a little bit of an overview into my own process. And of course, when I came to the Amazon rainforest 18 years ago, the illness that I had was a great motivation to actually find genuine practitioners and real elders who were not just doing a show for the tourists. Even at that time,
must be a bigger purpose for me in life. And yeah, I started to look where, would I put myself in this life. And I trusted that the answers will come, and the messages were clear for me to come to the Amazon rainforest. But although the messages were clear, I didn't know where or what to look for. I felt this big call for me, and the only access that I had was the internet. So I started to look into the internet, and the Ayahuasca traditions were coming up. And yeah, I went for a retreat, and the call for me was to become a medicine man. But yeah, I started engaging with these traditions, and the answer was, it's basically I don't need to become anyone or anything. It's already within me. But then also I asked myself, so what should I do now? Just stay on the side of the street, and how do I engage with life? So I started to look, where to find good healers, but that was very difficult for me, because there was a lot of stories, and I heard a lot about people manipulated, and all I could do is trust myself. And then through my experience, I had to see whether what was shared with me was being was what I was experiencing, if it was beneficial or not. And yeah, it was I'm still on this discovery, and luckily I came to Paititi, where this overview of these ancient cultures and civilizations were shared.
Once again, I hear that there is no sound.
No, it keeps going out. Some people are
Keeps
commenting.
going out.
Can you ask if someone to comment if they hear you?
Can someone comment if they hear me, or if they hear Elton?
Some people said sound now, okay.
Okay.
But it seems like it keeps going up.
Okay, great. Okay, so continue.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was it is an inspirational journey for me to start to learn about these traditions and the way it was meant to be, because the way I was introduced for this is, or the promise that it was shared with me, that basically I can get what I want, I'm gonna be happy, have power, get girlfriends, or whatever love life I want. And for me, there was something fishy in there. That was not my motivation in there. So yeah, coming to Paititi, I started to realize that it's basically about learning how to face everyday's challenges, and face challenges, but with an attitude that can, that can go through all these difficult moments and actually not cause harm. That it's not about singing and becoming a shaman. Actually, that idea had to go, to be able to learn how to become just a human being and see that my inner process is related to everyone else, and there is nothing special about me.
Thank you, Elton. Yeah, this is a bit of a controversial subject in the Amazonian and Andean traditions today. A lot of the healers and shamans, they are focusing on certain accomplishment and certain magical powers, or the resolution of certain problems without necessarily consciousness being involved. And so some may argue that it's not about consciousness. that it's about taking some magical potion and applying some remedies and doing some magical incantations, and then basically fixing one's life and doing it in a way that is giving you what you want, which is not necessarily what you need. And here it's interesting to see the origin and this greater overview of how these cultures came to be. In the Andean mountains, we just had recently the winter solstice, the Inti Raymi, the celebration of the sun, and the basic myth creation story, the creation myth story in the Andean mountains and in the Amazon rainforest has to do with this love relationship between the Mother Earth and the Father Sun. These are animistic traditions. The Father Sun relates to the light of consciousness. The Mother Earth relates to the unconditional love that is potentially inherent within all of us. And then it is this love relationship where the light of consciousness is continuously merging on deeper and deeper levels with the unconditional capacity to love. And the unconditional capacity to love means just that it's unconditional. It's not based on conditions. It's not like everything is nice in my life and I can be loving, and then suddenly everything is going haywire, and then I'm not going to be loving. So the indigenous people, they have been able to thrive in very difficult circumstances, including the rainforest and the mountains, and they've been able to thrive because they were able to really unite together. They've been able to open their hearts to each other and the surrounding world under very harsh conditions. And so the unconditional love has to do with that it's not based on conditions. No matter what the conditions are, it's possible to open one's heart and not act from a place of fear, and because of that have the necessary objectivity and insight. It's this childlike nature that is based on inspiration, it's based on exploration, it's based on awe. If we are based on fear, then it's not possible for us to open our minds, really. We have to go in this kind of tunnel vision mentality. And so the indigenous people, they've been able to cultivate that ingenuity because of that capacity to be conscious within the heart-centered presence. And the Incas, they were the last of the link of many civilizations. They also have referred to an original enlightened society, and the Incas refer to themselves as the children of the sun. The children of the sun for the Incas had to do with this basic love relationship that all life forms are involved in, the relationship between the Mother Earth and the Father Sun. However, as human beings, the Incas have recognized that we have the capacity to be conscious, that we have the capacity to be aware of that awareness that is infused into everything, where the animals, the birds, the trees, they were known to be semi-divine because they are a part of this greater organism. They are a part of this higher consciousness, however, not fully realizing that. And as human beings, we have the capacity to actually realize ourselves to be a part of a greater organism, to be a part of this living earth, and not only to be a part of it, but to actually channel, to be conduits of that higher awareness in our lives. In that way, for the indigenous people, it was the same thing. And actually, many indigenous people, they still see themselves as the original Incas. They say that the Inca was not some kind of a race. It's actually a certain state of realization. It's a certain state of consciousness. And the first Incas have received this wisdom from the people in the rainforest. The place where our sanctuary is located in the Paititi Institute is bordering the Manu National Reserve, where some of the uncontacted tribes, last uncontacted tribes in the world are located. And the area is known to be the heart of all the hearts in the Incan mythology. This myth of Paititi, the realm of enlightened ancestors. And the people in that area, some tribes they have some minimum contact, and they refer to themselves as the first Incas. There are the Machigenga people, the Wachipari people, and they refer to themselves as the first Incas because of that higher state of awareness that they have been able to maintain in that environment, the rainforest, where it is so obvious how interconnected everything is. And this light of consciousness, the children of the sun, it did not make people, it did not put people higher on a pedestal above the rest of the life forms. If anything, for the indigenous people, it put them into greater service because of that awareness that we are a part of a greater organism, and we can recognize that, and happiness is not possible unless shared. Then it's very essential to actually be in service to the harmony, to the balance of this greater organism, so that we can continuously live in a planet, in an environment that is thriving, that is sustainable, so that future generations can continue to be of benefit to that. And without consciousness, without awareness, none of that is possible. And so then, of course, gradually, with the advent of Western civilization and the superficial modern values spreading throughout the world, then we have been experiencing a greater degree of separation and egocentricity. And there is this certain magical potion, magical pill mentality where I don't have to think about it, I don't have to get involved. I have a problem and I can just flick my fingers and everything is going to be fixed. I just put me on the table, operate on me, put me to sleep. I don't have to know what it has to do with, and then there is no problem. And that is a very unsustainable way to look at life, because then the symptoms are treated rather than the problem. And the problem has to do with this certain ignorance from the root of the word ignoring. Just ignoring the issues and thinking that we can just keep going and put band-aids on and not deal with this basic awareness that engages in all challenges of life. And then, of course, that mentality has started to spread through these cultures that are more in connection with the big cities, with the political issues in the government and all kinds of things like that, and then are responding in a way to the consumerist mentality. People are coming from all over the world and they want to be special. They want to hear how their problems can be just resolved in a snap of a finger, in a matter of 1 day or 2 days, however long the vacation that they have in, so they can go back into their regular normal lives, right? And not have any problems. And then from there, came this kind of like promise. Yeah, just, do what I tell you and give me what I want, and I'll do some magic and everything will be fine in your life. But the original traditions, they were not really based on that.
Yeah, I think something that I can relate to is that, where I come from, it's like you go somewhere, you pay, you get the results, you're out. And it's something that I, experienced myself in here. I brought this mentality, like I wasn't even aware. It's like I'm looking, I had the idea that that's what it was promoted, or that's what I felt it was promoted on the internet. Wherever I looked in YouTube videos, take ayahuasca and ayahuasca will sort your life. And I was believing actually that there is something like that. That I am maybe uncomfortable, unhappy, and I can do something that takes this away from me. But I'm I'm experiencing that it's not the case. It's actually the capacity to stay with the uncomfortability that makes one thrive. The capacity to stay with all the difficulties in life, and this is coming through my interaction with the guidance that you are giving, because so far what I experienced with the Shipibo traditions and cultures, this was never shared with me.
And of course, these traditions, they are mystery initiation schools. So they have many different safety mechanisms, right? So that people who don't have the right intention, who don't have the right determination in their life, so they won't have access to this deeper wisdom, deeper knowledge, greater power. And because of that, within these traditions, of course, there had to be different levels of initiation and different levels of engagement with this work. And it's not just the Shipibo, and it's within other Amazonian and Andean traditions as well, that there are many different tests that are brought through. And of course, the tests have to do with our mentality. So sometimes the tests, they don't have to be something that is necessarily very unpleasant or very uncomfortable. Sometimes the test has to do with basically making your wishes come true. Okay, what do you want? You want some material possessions? Okay, you got it. So then if that's all that you want, then you will not engage with these traditions on a deeper level. When the conquistadors came into this region, they came and they were looking for the treasure. And for them the treasure had to do with little pieces of gold. And so then of course, they got that. And the real knowledge, the real wisdom became hidden. Right? This original enlightened society, according to legend, most of them have teleported into another realm, another dimension. Some of them stayed behind to create these reminders for the time of humanity where people will need it the most. But overall, it was hidden, the real treasure. The Paititi, the enlightened realm that had complete abundance according to legend. There is a parallel myth of El Dorado, that was the city of gold. The real gold was the spiritual gold, was this wisdom, the blueprint of evolution of humanity that unravels the highest potential of who we are, that transcends the limitations of our conditioned existence. And of course, at that time, humanity was not ready for that. And so there are many safety mechanisms, and there are many levels of initiation within these traditions that today are being lost to the world. There's this oversaturation of information, including on the internet, and there's this whole ayahuasca community and society that is based on the limited knowledge. And so it's not the fear that dominates your life, but it's the love that infuses your life. Is that okay? Sounds better again? Somebody comment? I think the sound is back.
No, it's coming.
So, yeah, it basically has to do with that. So, really to take solace in love rather than fear. Not to constantly be chased by it and go about life because of dissatisfaction, because of disempowerment, because of the need for constant entertainment, but because of that call of the heart to continuously direct our lives, to continuously navigate our lives in more and more meaningful ways. And so that's what these traditions were based upon. And so then once we are able to ground in that way, once we are able to actually cultivate that basic seed of awareness, then we can go into our everyday lives that are so full of all kinds of distractions and dynamics and not forget. And so these traditions, they were meant to be as reminders. One of the ways for this that these traditions were called is the Journey of Remembrance, because it is something that is very inherent in all of us. It's that capacity. It's that connection with the unconditional motherly love. And it's the remembrance of that, becoming aware, no longer dismissing that. And In that way, these traditions, they're gearing towards that wholeness, towards that harmony. The approach of medicinal plants, it is very much about that. The medicinal plants in the rainforest, they represent certain characteristics, certain personality traits of Mother Nature, and each one of them is like a key that unlocks a certain inherent quality within ourselves. It's not an external type of healing, but it's really that reminder that this quality is available within oneself. Of course, today the medicinal plants are often approached in the same way that the pharmaceutical industry is approached. Just take some kind of a pill and everything will be solved for your life. And the original purpose of it was not like that. It was based on consciousness. Okay, if you are already willing to face the issues in your life, then there are certain medicinal plants that can support you in unraveling those qualities that you're already working with. Otherwise, it's just a band-aid. And the point is to really to cultivate that recognition of the heart's full potential. And that's what these traditions are based. So of course, today people come to the Amazon rainforest and it's similar to some of the other traditions where there is a particular disharmony, disbalance, dis-ease, and you can take certain medicinal plants, you can undergo certain treatment that will align the energy channels in your being and bring it into a certain state of wholeness on an intuitive level. And then it creates an effect of health. And then of course, then the more conscious it becomes, the more sustainable it is. Otherwise, yeah, you can tune yourself up and then go into the conditioned existence and then go and get all distorted again. It's the same principle that I see with Oriental medicine today, where people go and they receive an acupuncture treatment that aligns the energy channels, but if the individual is not willing to understand how it got misaligned in the first place, based on one's own decisions in life, based on the way that one engages with one's emotions, based on the way that one engages with the purpose and the meaning in one's life, then it's a very temporary treatment. And this is one of the problems that the scientists are having with the Amazonian traditions, where they are trying to put it into statistics and see, okay, you know, how many people get healed if they take a certain plant. And then of course it's not just the plant, it's the energetic treatment that comes with it, but it's not just the energetic treatment as well. It's one's own willingness to maintain that realization, to change, to turn one's life around, and not to go back into old patterns. And of course, to do that, one has to understand what it's about.
So it seems like it's a holistic, complex way of understanding things, that it's not just, you know, like one thing or another. Because to me, what it's playing in my head is like, yeah, I have a problem, you know, I come to you, you know, I feel good. But if I don't understand, it's like that same movie that was playing back, it will repeat itself. You know, it's only beneficial for a certain amount of time. But what I'm getting is that these traditions are geared towards a complete change, transformation, that then the movie is changed rather than being dependent on someone or understood. And in that way there is complete transformation, not dependency on something external.
Yeah, essentially it's gearing towards giving you the steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then it's up to you to really engage with your life. It's up to you to face yourself. It's up to you to really go into some of those most darkest corners in your life, some of those issues and challenges and traumas that maybe you have given up on. You decided that it's unresolvable and you cannot deal with it, you don't have the capacity, and then your whole life has been created around not dealing with it, this whole personality construct. And so then what these traditions are gearing towards is actually providing an example, a direct experience, and a blueprint of how to go about that, how to engage with that inherent human potential that is capable of facing the most darkest corners of development, of this process of evolution. And then in those most darkest corners, even a greater potential is unraveled. And so that is the point of these traditions, is to work with that. And of course, there are different stages, as I mentioned, in this process of initiation, in this mystery initiation school. And in the indigenous cultures, they have very specifically delineated this kind of like grades of initiation. So the first level of initiation, I think in the Shipibo culture as well, they call it the level of seeing, right? And all of those levels, of course, they have to do with a certain degree of interconnectedness. This basic principle of reciprocity that is at the source of consciousness evolution. And so the first level is the level of seeing. And basically what it has to do with is the recognition of a certain experience. So let's say I have a certain issue and I may not know how to go about it or how to resolve it, and then I can start opening my eyes and seeing outside of me and seeing that actually other people have this issue as well. And that is the first level, and just that first level is already providing a certain interaction with the world around. It's a very basic level of interaction, but unfortunately today, based on this kind of consumerist mentality, many shamans operate on that level, where they see that they themselves are dissatisfied, they want what the Western world has to provide, they want riches, they want power, they want reputation, they want their children to succeed in the Western world, and then they have Westerners who come to them looking for some kind of a spiritual knowledge or insight, and then they say, okay, they have the same experience of dissatisfaction that I have, so I'm going to play with that. They come to me and I can see that they are dissatisfied, I know it because I have it in myself, so I'm going to try to create an appearance of giving them what they want, telling them how special they are, telling them that they can be a shaman, giving them some kind of quick fix potions that will appear as if everything is fine, and then engage with it on that level. So it's this kind of like basic level that is related to seeing. Okay, I'm no longer just stuck in my own experience and I think that I'm the only one who is dealing with these issues, but I start to open myself up and see that there is actually relatedness on that level. And then of course, if that is the only way to interact with it, then it's a vicious cycle, right? It's this basic experience, then these shamans, these healers, so-called healers, then they get stuck on that level of dissatisfaction because they think that that's the only thing that exists and that's the only way that they can engage with it in this world in order to get ahead, and they think, okay, there is nothing else but dissatisfaction and I'm gonna make the best of it. I'm gonna engage and get the best and manipulate and work with others and create this sideshow attraction, and do this kind of like exotic ceremonies for people who come, to tell their friends later about. And I'm gonna, move along in the world, move up in the world based on that, and then that's where they get stuck. They don't know that there's anything else. Then, of course, there are continuously more advanced levels of initiation that go beyond dissatisfaction. Okay, yeah, that's the first thing, is the dissatisfaction, but then if I see that the dissatisfaction is actually an invitation to open my heart to my own experience, and then through that to the experience of others, then I can start to see that it's not what people want, but it's people really need. And not get stuck on the superficial egocentric level, but go beyond this conditioned egocentricity, this self-grasping, this limited, fixed identity, and see that, yeah, I can see myself in this other person. I can open my heart a little bit more. And I can learn how to be with my issues a little bit more, because I see that it is important so that I can be of greater benefit to people that I love in my life. And then, of course, on that level, that's where the discipline starts. That's where I start to see it's not what I want, it's what I need, and how can I really be with that? How can I be with what bothers me? How can I recognize the greater fulfillment in my life? Not just instant gratifications that have no lasting benefit, but what is that greater fulfillment? What is it that none of this, superficial enjoyments can provide? And then I can start to be in greater service to that organism, in higher service to the greater organism. And the more than that is done, it's a certain turnaround from the ego being a capricious master to becoming in service, to becoming a steward of that greater organism, cultivating a garden. And the fulfillment that comes from that cultivation of the garden, rather than cutting all the flowers and selling them at the market and then not knowing what else to do in one's life. And so this is what these traditions are based on. And then there are greater and greater levels of cultivation of that love, from being very limited to certain conditions to becoming more open and more open and more open, until there is that culmination and realization of how unconditional it really is.
Wow, you always blow my mind, Roman. And it's beautiful to hear that there is more than just personal attainment and making the world fit my idea. But what few things that come up to me is that also seeing that through my life. So for example, I was in ceremonies, and with ayahuasca, something that I was getting, the message is to become, to share this. And it's like in my heart wants to share this because I see it's beneficial, but my ego wants to be famous, wants to be recognized. So I also see that there is danger in this path if the guides themselves, they are not legit, and if they are just sharing the medicine in this way without themselves being conscious. I see that this is a very good message that is being shared from you, just to be aware that there are different phases of these traditions, that people can get stuck in there, and without the right guidance, then it's a mess. Because for me, if I did not come to a place, inside I was still looking for the truth. I stuck to that. But without your guidance, without the guidance of your experience, then my mind was definitely, I'm seeing benefits from this. I'm seeing that we are interconnected, yes, but the baseline is me. to the show. It's like me being the center of, the show. And yeah, it's sad if these traditions just stop there and transmit only this. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, and this is again, it's kind of like people only have a certain limited amount of time, to take a vacation, to go to the Amazon, and then they go and they don't have an opportunity necessarily to stay with these healers, to stay with the shamans, with the people who are engaged, the practitioners in these traditions, and to see how they are in everyday life. And then, it turns into this kind of rock star show, where, somebody can put up a great show, have a great ceremony, and then it starts to turn into this kind of like, well, how can I learn how to be a rock star? How can I, do this show and have a ceremony that is, very, full of special effects and things like that, and, leave people, really happy and excited, instead of actually living with them side by side and seeing, well, how are they in their everyday lives? How are they as people? What are their everyday life dedications? What are their goals in life? How do they engage with their community? How do they engage with their own people? What plans do they have for their family, for their children? Often they don't really want their children to do this. They want their children to go to a Western university and become, some kind of a, well-off person that is already integrated into the modern society. And then engaging in this indigenous knowledge just as a means to an end. Okay, this is what people want, I can do this, so I can get by in life, and then become better off in society. But that's not what these traditions were originally about. And so then it's important not to sell out, so to speak. And that's a big problem, because these traditions originally, they were meant to really engage the human spirit, to allow the human spirit to shine in the face of adversity. But if our whole modern society today is based on avoiding adversity and avoiding the problems and getting comfortable, then the human spirit cannot shine. And then these traditions, they are kind of not really recognized for their real meaning and value in Western society, and are often engaged by the people who still have interest in them, which is, the foreigners, the Westerners, often the locals. They don't know how to get by in Western society with these traditions. And so the people who still have interest come to it, often from a place of these traditions specifically geared towards going into the root of conditioning, into the muck of our lives, and then utilize that muck to become fertile soil. Right? And so this is something to really to be aware of. And so then, of course, it's this radiance of consciousness. Many people today, they like to speak about some kind of enlightenment, some kind of just a magic resolution of everything, and I can just find this magical formula or a magical incantation, a magical trick, and I can just collect this bag full of tricks, and suddenly all the problems will go away in my life. And in these traditions, it was not that. These traditions were always revolving around understanding the suffering, understanding the conditioning. They are healing traditions. And so to actually be present, to learn how to be more and more present with what bothers us, with the issues in our lives, to understand the labyrinths of our own minds, of our own constructs that we have created in order not to face ourselves. And then in that way, then it's possible to actually come to resolution. And of course, not many people are interested in that. There is a famous quote by Carl Jung that the real meaning of evolutionary path is not to imagine figures of light, but to make the darkness conscious. And then he goes on to say that it's not very popular. And so most people don't like to engage with that. And these ancient traditions, these ancient lineages, they are specifically based on that. It's not the new age culture which is all about the light and love and light and the unicorns and how special we all are. No, in these traditions it's okay, they're very practical, very relevant. Okay, be with what bothers you. Face your fears, face your darkness, and know that it's possible to do that. Because just knowing that it's possible is already a huge thing. It's a huge step forward, just to know that it's possible. Most people today, they don't even think that it's possible. And that's where there's such an elaborate culture around entertainment and not facing oneself.
I see that the fact, that one can actually face oneself. That's what I start to understand. That's where the healing is. It's like that. The fear, the things that bother me, is actually a gift that I can take to see what's beyond there. And it's not something that it's bad and I have to get rid of, but actually I have to learn how to be with, not get rid of.
It can definitely be a blessing in disguise. And again, it can be a blessing in disguise if there is the awareness that is possible. Right? Because ignorance is just not knowing what is possible. And so because of not knowing what is possible, then just engaging in a very unconscious way with all of the problems. And it's happening in society today, in the whole world. And so just knowing what is possible, and so recognizing that yes, it is possible, and there are people who have been able to do that, and who've been able to face, just as many challenges as I have, and even more, and have found this great capacity of the human spirit to shine in the face of challenges. And just knowing that, and knowing it in a very clear and direct way, because these traditions, they are not just dead knowledge. They are passed on from an individual to an individual. They are passed on from one individual who has been able to face their problems and transcend those issues in their lives and discover those profound human values because of that, to another individual. And so it happens in a very live way through direct examples. And because of that, there is that connecting link that makes it possible. Otherwise, if I just read about it in a book, it's not a real experience. It's not a real human being that I can connect with. If I can just take some kind of a magical potion, it doesn't matter, even if it gives me, people drink ayahuasca today and it gives them this very powerful, opening experiences. But if I don't have a direct relatedness to people who can actually cultivate that, not just in this one ceremony, but in every moment of their lives, then I leave that experience to that situation. I think, okay, when I drink this magical potion and it can open up and I can experience it, but then in everyday life there is no connection. There is no bridge that connects that experience into the situations in my life when I have an argument with someone, when I fight with someone, when I'm dealing with a traffic jam or something like that. Okay, now it's not so spiritual, it's not so surrounded by pretty songs, it's surrounded by heavily honking cars. We were just on tour in New York. It's like that. And so then how can I take it out of that context if it wasn't for this direct lineage of living wisdom, people who actually show that it's not just this experience. Experiences come and go, but it's really this attitude that can be cultivated under all circumstances.
Yeah.
And so these traditions, they were never meant to be locked into a museum. They were never meant to be just made into some kind of a relic that is an exotic, thing. They were always meant to be brought into what is the most current, what is the most actual in our lives. And then in that way, then they are living wisdom traditions. And so there is this greater context, and there is this journey of remembrance and specific steps that entail discovering oneself to be a conduit of that greater organism, to be a conduit of that greater and greater capacity to channel intensity of life. Okay. Yeah, the connection here in the mountains is not the best, so sometimes there are moments. Thank you to everyone who telling us that the sound goes off and things like that. But it is all part of life, right? So these traditions, they specifically they were gearing towards remembering oneself as a channel, right? Not to get locked into this kind of scarcity mentality and be a limited, fixed identity, but how to be a channel. And not just how to be a channel, but how to be a channel of greater and greater amounts of intensity, how to deal with more and more challenging situations. And that goes throughout everything that we experience in life, from the moment that we are born and every situation, and to the moment of death itself. And so then, of course, that's another subject in itself, where death is in Western society is something people don't like to think about, but it's something that can be very, horrific if there is no awareness of it. It's like we can go through experiences and have some kind of illness and not be able to do what we want in life, and we can manage that. Maybe we can lose some things in life, we can manage that. Maybe we can lose relationships in life, that can be a little bit more difficult. Then we can lose people that we love, that can be even more difficult. But then to lose oneself, right, it's like it's not just losing all of those external things, it's suddenly not losing one's own identity, losing one's own body, losing everything that one has known, and not being able to hold on to anything. That can be a very horrifying experience. And so these traditions, again, they are pointing to this greatest intensity and how to channel it through the heart, how to discover the vast spaciousness of the heart, to to overcome even experiences such as that. And so the traditions, they have very, they are living wisdom schools. It's a very different curriculum than in the Western society. It's this guidance how to live one's life fully, and how to live one's life fully, and how to live one's life in the most meaningful and purposeful and joyful way. And the joy here is not the joy of pleasure, is the joy that comes from freedom. The freedom to experience everything in life, whether pleasant or unpleasant, and being able to withstand that, being able to open one's heart even more. Right? So that's the freedom of the heart to be fully present with everything that life brings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Roman, for that. I see that also the most important is really human relation, like living human relation, because then actually if I can, even in our relationship, like I share with you how many times I close up, and then you bring up again the point is like that's not wrong, but you show me that there is space behind it, like learn about that space. And yeah, it's beautiful for me to be able to actually go beyond technique or learning a structure or singing songs, but actually to be sitting in your presence and just open up. And it's like I hear that the tradition is like, can you do that? Allow yourself to open to that. And it's also relating to that, like letting go of what I cannot do, because when that will come, it's like, yeah, there's no choice here. I have to let go.
Yeah, and that's definitely a very big part of these traditions, right? And again, I like to bring it into the context of the modern society, where there is this kind of like, okay, it's all about one's own experience, and it's all about this kind of like self-discovery, but without relatedness, self-discovery is not possible. And so there is this whole society of psychonauts, and and I used to be one of them before I came to these traditions that just think that they're gonna take all of those different psychoactive substances and go into the aberrations of their minds and go into all kinds of different transcendental experiences, but then maintain that within their own separated existence, within their own individual experience. And within these indigenous traditions, the sacred science is thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. And it has this universal quality to it, where it's not just one person individual experience, but it's a blueprint of the evolution of consciousness that is universal, that we are all going through in our own unique ways, but the steps, there are certain universal thresholds of awakening. There is this capacity, we're all dealing with the same range of feelings and emotions, and we all have this different grades of evolution, starting from this separated bubble to gradual awakening and opening, and it has to do with the greater organism. It has to do with reciprocity. And that is a huge part of these traditions. That without that reciprocity, without relatedness, without the ability of the people within these societies, the indigenous societies, to come together in the face of circumstance and recognize how they can actually support each other in activating each other's highest potential, and then humbly share that in the face of circumstance and adversity. Without these traditions, they would not, humanity would not survive. Right? So it's this relatedness that is very essential. And we talk about this kind of, it sounds nice, of course, unconditional love, and it's something that has to be put through the test, right? We relate to that as the divine love is forged in the pits of hell. And when that happens, in these traditions, they have they have developed very good ways to engage in that process, to really that wisdom of no escape. And when that happens, when someone is going through, their challenges, it's not just in a ceremony. It's not just drinking ayahuasca. It's this certain connection with the tradition and engaging with oneself and gradually gaining intensity and going through greater difficulties, and all of one's issues start to come up more and more. And then at a certain point, when one least expects it, then it becomes extremely overwhelming and difficult. And at that point, of course, the ego just screams that it doesn't want anything to do with it, and it just wants to turn around and run. And so that is the point where that connection with the lineage, with this human relatedness, with the human relationship, it's not, the bag of tricks does not help in most circumstances. It has to be this relatedness, friendship, knowing, okay, I'm going through this right now, and I'm not going to close down completely. I'm going to be open to the guidance of friendship, of someone who is my friend and wishes me the best and knows what that means and have gone through their own extreme experience of facing themselves. That is very important. Many people today, they think, I can just do it by myself and I can just hear how it is and I can just go, but then when that actually happens, right, when one faces one's worst fears, one's worst darkness and conditioning, to really go through it, right, the only way out in these traditions is through. To really go through it, it's essential to have that human connection.
I think that's also very rare to find in my experience. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm lucky, but I consider myself lucky to also find someone genuine like you. And although I must say that the doubts keep bombarding my mind, and that's also difficult, because when the doubts cloud the mind, it's my experience is real, like the doubt takes over, I can't see beyond. So I think it's very essential to cultivate long-term friendships where one can experience different through various situations in life. So when the difficult situations come, also the doubt comes with them, but then one has a point of reference to the past, like we went through this together. So the doubt has less chance to pull one down.
Yeah, definitely. The doubts have to be taken into the equation. The doubts, they are part of the path, and then to have skillful ways to engage with those doubts. Right, instead of thinking, okay, I'm just gonna have this, I had this experience where everything is light, and that's it, from now on everything is fine. No, that's just experiences come and go. So then actually knowing that, the doubt will keep coming, and then I can have the tools, the perspectives, the connection between real human beings to actually engage in these doubts in a constructive way.
Peaceful.
Right.
Peaceful. Not destructive. Yeah.
So this is a little overview of these traditions and the sound. I just put back. So yeah, so if there are any questions, comments, feedback, please let us know. Thank you everyone for watching. If not, I think Elton has some questions.
Yeah, let me know.
Sound is good?
Okay, the sound is good now, right?
May I ask?
Sure.
Yeah, Roman, I also wanna see what's your opinion about, various things. Some I hear that these traditions should be shared for free, where in my experience, actually engaging in even just saving money to come, there's also in there the teaching start. It's like, what am I selecting in my life? So I can't say that that is my experience, that things should be for free, because I think that that is a selective thing. And also I hear that back in the days, the apprentices, the ones that wanted to become shamans, would spend an extensive amount of time with the healer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that then after that the shaman would teach. It would be up to the shaman to teach or not. But nowadays I hear about 6 months courses that you get a certification and you get a diploma for becoming a shaman. Like, what is this all about?
Sure. Well, about the certification diploma, 6 months, I think it's more of a diploma of a rock star, of a shaman performer, who can, do some kind of, sing some songs and shake some shakes. And it's not really about this deeper approach and engagement with the actual blueprint of evolution of consciousness. So it's good to see that today the term shaman is often replacing the term musician, or a rock star performer that is doing some kind of a ceremony, performance, and then it's gearing more towards that.
Mm-hmm.
So in my experience, often it's like that, right? There is a certain expectation of what a shaman is in the modern world, and how to engage with that, and then people go and have some kind of experience and think that that's what it's about. Then in terms of the value of these traditions, I think that this kind of like thing that is being interpreted in our modern society today, it's like, oh, this should be for free, and in the past they didn't have money, but in the past they still had energy exchange. That was a big part of these traditions. In Quechua, it's Aini, and nothing was for free. Everything was exchanged, and so then when people would go and receive a healing, receive a certain advice, a direction in their life, they would give whatever they had of value. And first and foremost, it was really for the people receiving the healing to really acknowledge for themselves, to themselves, the value that they're getting. Otherwise, easy come, easy go. So if somebody is getting something for free, they don't really appreciate it. If somebody is really working for it in their lives, really knows that it's something that is worthwhile to them, then they'll appreciate it. I myself have invested, everything that I had in my life and beyond into these traditions, into this way of life, and because of that, I really took it in. I took it to heart, and I have been cultivating that and really seeing how actually, even though I have invested maybe $1 million by now, it's invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
The wisdom, the guidance, the healing that I have received, it cannot be, measured.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I know that I have given all that I have received in my life, to actually offer it in exchange to this knowledge, and because of that, it's really meaningful to me. And then, of course, it is also something that we have to acknowledge in our today's society. The energy exchange is happening, through monetary values, and it's no longer we live, in a village where there is like, goats and milk and different crops, but it's essential to understand that for this knowledge to survive, to thrive in the modern circumstances, then there has to be some base support. And in that way, the knowledge can actually be effective. So today, we have the doctors, that are, the Western medicine today. It's kind of like often is just extremely lucrative, and there's not even so much of a human-to-human connection and care. And at the same time, there is a great value that people are placing in that. And the same thing goes with everything else in our lives, with airlines and with the basic food that is provided, from different places, and there are all kinds of ways to engage in this world that necessitate energy. And these traditions, they are not outside of energy. They are the origin of that energy. And so it's important to include this kind of expression of the original energy, which is money, to really return it into these traditions. It's not something that is negative. It's not something that is like, the money is materialism and it's bad. No, it's how it's engaged. It's how it's approached. If the true values are the values of humanity, then everything else can support it. But of course, everything is supporting consciousness on its evolutionary journey, but nothing can substitute it. So it comes down to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Roman. I have another question, but
So 1 second.
Yeah, we'll see.
There are questions from those who are watching us. Again, thank you for tuning in today. And if there are any questions, comments, then we would love to hear from you. Please let us know. You can write them if something is coming up. Otherwise, Elton has been collecting some of his questions and questions from people from our community, so he can share. Okay.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is this idea of everything is perfect, spirit knows, spirit will take care of things. I find, that is true if I can only do my best, but in terms of ceremonies, for example, I heard about a case where there was this one person, she was, I think, going through losing awareness and foam coming out, and the idea of the shamans were like, that's, it's perfect, spirit knows, and they didn't do anything about it until she contacted the doctors and she was about to lose her life. Have you got any?
Again, I don't know who were the shamans involved in that and what was their degree of, awareness and realization. But the spirit is, sometimes is used kind of in the same way as in the dogmatic religions, where there's some kind of a spirit somewhere out there. But actually it has to do with the collective presence and the ability to be a conduit for that collective presence, and to engage with awareness and to engage with sobriety, and really see that all kinds of different challenges and situations arise, and then it's essential to really be working with that, and to be fully tuned in and to have a certain knowledge, certain skills, certain know-how when there is a crisis taking place. And it's not that everything is perfect, in that way. Everything is an opportunity to learn and to awaken from this dream of separation and to be of benefit and not to cause harm, like you have said in the beginning. And so then if somebody is going through something and they are subject to all kinds of different conditionings and their own ignorance and not knowing how to deal with that, then it's essential to actually be fully engaged in that situation and be providing of that support. And then if the resuscitation is necessary, if it's important to acknowledge what the individual is going through so that they are not compromising their lives, then it's important. It's not just letting everything be as it is, and not, especially within certain situations when people's lives are at stake. Then these traditions are not a joke, and these traditions are specifically, the indigenous people, they didn't have 911 emergency services that they could call, and that they had to actually really learn how to directly get involved when life was in danger.
So it's a lot of responsibility and skill, and it's essential that when one is engaging with these traditions, is like to take it seriously, because other people's lives and mental.
Absolutely, and it's not, again, today a lot has to do with this kind of like entertainment show, but the point of these traditions is to actually prepare people, to provide people with the necessary tools that they can more safely engage with themselves when going beyond their conditioning, when going into certain experiences of the greater expanse of consciousness, of the ego disassociation, and then learning how to really work with that, because all kinds of different ingrained fears and obscurations and traumas come up in the process.
Thank you, Roman.
Okay, so I think that's good for today. Thank you everyone who's been watching and connecting and tuning in with us. We will continue learn how to be more skillful in the way that we can bring it across and not have the sound disappear as much. And we wish everyone well, and many blessings to everyone, and we look forward to keep co-evolving side by side with the world today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.